In the next 12 months, the rich and wealthy will not be lawyers, doctors, or software engineers. Instead, it will be the people who leverage the AI skills that matter. So in this video, we are talking about 5 skills you must have if your goal is to become rich in 2026. And plot twist, none of those skills are actually tech related. My name is Lana, and I have been working in the agency capacity and the freelance capacity with businesses since 2020. I work with multi-million-dollar businesses and help them go from 6 to 7, from 7 to 8, from 8 to 9 figures. And I've also personally built 3 businesses that reach mid and late 6 figures. And it's all because of all these skills. The first skill is what I call stick-to-itiveness, which is ultimately the foundation of your success. The shiny objects and the new shiny tools are actually destroying your momentum. Ultimately, you must become a fucking Velcro to your dreams and commit to them. In a world where everyone gets off to jumping from one AI tool to the next AI tool, from one shiny object to another shiny object, only those who commit to themselves and their dreams will ultimately win, but especially in 2026. The best example I can give you of this commitment is Todd Graves, who is the founder of the Raising Cane's. I don't know if you know his story, but ultimately when he had this idea that he will be the best person who makes the best chicken fingers and basically sells them in a franchise, right, in a store. So when he went to banks asking for loans, they refused. When he was trying to raise money, the lenders would refuse simply because they told him, A, this is a bad idea, B, you should go and see what McDonald's does, and basically cater to every taste. Well, guess what Todd did? He figured out a way how to finance his first store. He stuck to this idea, he stuck to this dream, he did not listen to naysayers. Ultimately, he decided, this is my goal, this is my dream, and I am committing to this no matter what else everybody else is doing. And 30 years later, he's worth $20 billion. He is now a billionaire. Only because he committed. He didn't jump from one thing to another thing. He didn't do what everybody else told him to do. He did not do what other peoples were doing. As a result, he's a billionaire. More down-to-earth example would be myself. Back in 2020, when COVID stole my first business, my fitness coaching business, I needed to make money very quickly. And so I committed to going into becoming a freelance copywriter. Now, I knew nothing about it, absolutely zero. Yet I told myself, I'm giving myself 90 days to learn and to land my first client. Didn't jump from one thing to another thing, that chose 3 things to focus on for the next 90 days. Guess what? 90 days later, I had 3 clients. I was making over $6,000 and I was on my way to making my first ever $10,000 a month. Stick-to-itiveness is what you need if you really want to win in 2026. How can you develop the skills? Because a lot of us never really learn how to do this, especially in our society where there are shiny objects everywhere, right? That is designed to distract us. What I like to do, what I used to do, is actually give myself a 90-day worthy goal. And then I would break down those goals by weeks and then daily. And I would just check off the boxes and focus on those things. Commitment, nothing else. Another thing that I would do is every single Friday, I would actually sit down for an hour and look, okay, this is what I did, these were the results, how can I adjust and move forward? What worked well, what didn't work well? Those of you who are working 9 to 5 and in IT, you probably do something similar. So why not use that and move it towards building a business of your dream? This is how you develop stick-to-itiveness. Commit to something for X amount of days and then do a little, 1% every single day. Once you've committed to the journey, the next thing to do is actually make people care about what you do. And that's why the next skill is actually storytelling. Storytelling is your communication power. Books have been around for centuries. I don't know if you remember, but when the Kindle and digital books became a thing, people thought that books will be done, kaput. That ain't gonna be a thing. Yet, people still writing books. We still have bestsellers, people read books. Even if you look at kids, we all love to hear bedtime stories. People buy on emotions and then they justify with logic. And the best way to move people to emotions, to actually evoke any emotions, is by telling stories. This is why mastering storytelling is actually really important. Now, you might think I'm selling AI tools, which first of all, you shouldn't be selling AI tools. But second of all, you still can sell AI services or AI tools by telling stories, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. So let's take an example, right? Let's say we have Sam and we have Kate. So Sam is somebody who knows everything about AI. He's watched every single YouTube video about AI tools, automation, agents, and everything like that. And so when he gets on a call with a potential client, he starts a conversation with how great he is as a tech person and all of the APIs and webhooks and automations and how great the agents is and so forth and so on. Now, Sam does sign a client and he's very excited. But after a while, his excitement actually fades. The reason is because quite early on, Sam realized that he gained another boss, because his boss, he tells me what to do, when to do, and he also messages him whenever the boss wants. So Sam is always putting out fires, and on top of everything else, Sam only makes $40 per hour. And the reason is because Sam, by leading with the logic, he now became a technician who is basically just got himself another boss. Now let's take Kate. Kate, to the contrary, doesn't really know a whole lot about AI, but she knows how to tell a story. She knows and understands that emotions is what drives people to make purchase decisions, and therefore what she knows is actually how to talk to businesses, how to tell them stories, how to hear their stories, and how to take her experience, turn it into a story that the business can actually relate to, or rather the decision maker of that business can relate to. So she gets on a call with a client and they start charting, and she realizes there is a problem, and to her mind comes a story where she worked with somebody, whether it's a 9-to-5 or a former client, where those people had, or that business had, a similar problem. So she tells a story of how that business struggled with this thing and they couldn't figure out what was happening and so forth and so on. And so at the end of the day, Kate signs that client for 6 figures. But here is the kicker. What happens is now Kate is looked as a growth strategist, right? She's somebody who understands the business. Now, whether or not that is true or not, but that's the sort of idea that has been sold to the business owner. Now, what Kate does is she actually goes and finds a AI technician, somebody who can do the dirty work for her. She now chills on the beach in Fort Lauderdale, sipping pina colada, virgin one, and more importantly, she only gets on a call with the client whenever they need to talk about particular different business growth tactics and so forth and so on, or check-ins. Everything else she has a technician to do and a VA. This is what I call AI enterprise, and this is ultimately what I do, and Kate is basically myself. And that's one of the reasons why learning how to tell stories. Now, if you are helping somebody, whether it is AI powered system or not, if you're helping somebody to generate leads and you're running Meta or old school Facebook ads, you have to know how to tell stories. You have to know how to tell a story that moves the person seeing the ad to click and book a call. Now, how do you actually learn the power of storytelling? Obvious thing would be to read books, especially bestsellers where there are story-driven bestsellers. The other thing is observe your life moments. Maybe stories, how you tell them to your friends. Maybe take it upon yourself to turn a seemingly mundane thing, let's say you left your work and you got into a car and you drove home, into a story. And the thing that you absolutely must study is what is called the hero's journey, which is basically the framework that Hollywood uses to create blockbusters and Netflix uses to create binge-worthy TV shows. But ultimately, when you are creating a story or talking to a business owner and you want to use a story, the thing that I like to do is I like to use what I call the PSRR framework, where first you talk about the problem, then the struggle, then you talk about the realization, and then ultimately the result that you were able to deliver. If this is your potential second client, or if you're able to turn your 9-to-5 experience into a powerful case study, which you can also do. I'll link the video on how to do that somewhere up here. But no matter how good your story is, you still need one thing that most people avoid, and that thing is courage. Now, I know the last thing you think of when it comes to developing AI skill is courage, but let me show you why courage is by far the most important skill you need to develop if you want to become an entrepreneur. When it comes to being an entrepreneur, and the whole thing about entrepreneurship is you're going against the norm. You're breaking social conditioning. And because of that, there's a lot of fear. And there's also a lot of fear because there's a lot of uncertainty. But ultimately, that fear is the toll you have to pay for freedom. So let me tell you a story. When you are an entrepreneur, you ultimately will have to sell either products or services. And on your journey, you will meet a lot of rejection. Now, back in 2020, as I already mentioned in one of my videos, when COVID stole one of my businesses, I went absolutely broke. I almost became homeless. And so I needed to figure out how to make money very quickly. Hence, I went into copywriting, freelancing copywriting. At that time, I reached out to somebody who I personally was looking up to quite a lot in the fitness space. And I thought that person would be, out of all people, he had 3, I believe, how many kids he had, and some of them were even daughters. I thought, like, definitely this person would support me. Ultimately, when I told him, listen, this is what I'm doing, would you happen to know anyone who could use this service? He told me, that's a bad idea. You should stop absolutely doing it, and you should probably figure something out. Good thing I did not listen to that person, because 6 months later, I was making 10K a month. And then another 6 months later, I started traveling the world. So that happens quite often with people who will tell you, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, and you shouldn't be doing this, and this is a bad idea, because ultimately they are projecting on yourself. And you need to have courage to face that, and maybe not tell them, but tell to yourself, you know what? Fuck them all. I'm still gonna go for it. The same thing happened with the AI when I started with the AI, right? The AI agency. What I decided to do, I know absolutely nothing about AI, but I know how to identify businesses' problems, and I know how to hire people who can basically create those solutions. And that's exactly what I did. I was scared because there's this idea like, am I being fraud? But ultimately, I knew that I can do A, very good, and B, very good. And the rest, I will figure it out. And that, again, you need courage. Now, how do you actually develop this skill? I could tell you to do one thing that scares you the most, which potentially a good thing, but ultimately I would say choose one thing for the next 90 days, and that one thing that is actually moves you closer to your goal, that scares you, and do it. Okay, so for a lot of you, the number one issue is getting a client. Okay, this is what most people come to me. They don't know how to choose a niche, how to get a client, but ultimately comes down to a client. So if you are scared of getting a rejection from maybe reaching out to a friend, do that. Okay, if you're scared of cold calling like I was, and I hate that because I'm not good at it, do that. Okay, because ultimately the only way you learn how to ice skate, if you put on them blades, ice skates, right, and you actually go and fall on your bum multiple times, and then you will be twirling like a freaking, I don't know, ice figure ballerina. But what I want you to do is give yourself permission to go after your dream, even if you only have 10% of knowledge. Just go and do it. You will learn, you will figure it out. The next skill is 100% controversial, because most people have been told to do the opposite of what I'm going to share. You're here, which tells me that you don't want what the average person has. Therefore, the next skill is the ability to be absolutely selfish. The thing is, what I've learned in my entrepreneurship career over the last 5 years is you cannot pour onto people if you are completely empty yourself. And selfishness is not ego, it's actually a structure. It is routine. It is discipline. When I say selfishness, what I think about is Sam Walton, the founder of the Walton. Sam was obsessed with building his empire. One of my favorite stories about how he bought a small airplane without even knowing how to fucking fly it, and then he hired somebody to teach him, and then he would fly that thing even in the most dangerous conditions. Now, would that be absolutely dangerous? Yes. That being said, he was obsessed, nothing bad happened, so he kept at it. But to me, when I think about selfishness, is saying selfishly no to the invites when people ask me to go with them on a Friday night. I know they will be talking about me. If they will be talking about me, I don't don't really give a damn, because while you are drinking and hangover on the next day or the next 2 days, I am building a life that will give me so much more than I could have ever imagined. I'm not comparing, I'm not saying like I'm better than them. It just is. To me, this is important. I'm choosing myself, my family, my life, my priorities over what others will think of me. It's me being able to say no to things that don't grow my business but make me look good or nice. Even if you're consistent, courageous, and focused, and you know how to tell really good stories, there is one last skill that we all have to develop, which is imperfectionism. Perfectionism is actually holding you back from the dreams and the life of your dream. One of the things that I suggest my students do is actually sell before you build. And a lot of the times I hear the pushback, so how can I even sell something if I don't even know how it's going to look and this and that, which is valid. But I'm going to give you the example, real life example of Apple, pretty big bloody company. Do they release 100% perfect phone? Never. They release it and then they update all of the bugs and this and that, right? They like release it 80% or maybe 50% good enough, and then they update it. Now, Grant Cardone, when his first book came out, it was filled with a lot of misspellings and grammar mistakes, yet that became a bestseller. When I wrote my first book, the first version was actually with lots and lots of grammatical errors and stuff like that. And I had people tell me, oh my God, how dare you release this book and whatnot. But I will also tell you that book helped 500 people in the first iteration. And then another one, another 500 people. That book helped thousands of people. Wouldn't that be very selfish of me in a negative way to wait and be like, oh my God, how can I, it has to be absolutely perfect and wait, right? Yes, that was selfish, but that's not a good selfish. Versus selfishly saying, you know what? It's 80% good enough. I'm going to release it and I'm going to improve upon. How can you actually develop this is give yourself permission to release something, to do something, to take action, even if you're only 50% good enough. Now, the irony is that none of these AI skills are actually tech related. All of them are business related. But in the AI world, this is exactly what you need to master, right? You can develop all of the AI tools and know exactly specifically how the things are working, but ultimately you have to start thinking like a business owner, like a founder. The AI tools and all the technical stuff, this is a technician thinking, where ultimately instead of having just one boss, you will be having multiple bosses, right? So you're changing one thing into another thing and they're equally the same, maybe even worse. But you have to start thinking about being a founder, right? You have to break the rules, you have to have the courage, you have to stay focused, you have to be selfish, and you have to tell really good stories. Now, let me know which of these skills you want to practice for the next 7 days down in the comments below, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.